Good afternoon and welcome to a really exciting conversation that I'm looking forward to having today with three leaders in higher education around the potential power and payoff of university industry collaborations across Ohio. We're going to be learning about the Ohio Innovation Exchange, which is a remarkable portal and platform that can help drive innovation and technology advancement, because we know we have a lot of tech focused leaders on this call today. And so we're going to hear from three leaders who are going to share more about their work that they're doing, both on campuses across Ohio, but also within the Ohio Innovation Exchange. And so let's get started. And so I'm going to do some quick introductions, and then we're going to hop into the conversation and really looking forward to it. So as we hop in, we're going to go first to Charles C. Charles is the Vice Chancellor for External Relations and Education Technology, the Ohio Department of Education, which is a statewide part of the Ohio State government, not Ohio State University, but the state of Ohio, and is instrumental as part of this. And so, Charles, welcome to the conversation. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do at the Ohio Department of Higher Education.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I was going to correct you on that, the Ohio Department of Higher Education. As Chris said, my name is Charles C. I am the Vice Chancellor for External Relations and Education Technology at the Ohio Department of Higher Education. I've been in that role for the past 4 years, but I've been with the department since 2008 in various other roles. I have principal responsibility of managing the Chancellor's Ohio Technology Consortium, also known as Ohio Tech, OTech. And within OTech, there are 4 verticals, one being the Ohio Academic Resource Network, also known as ORNet. And ORNet is the state's 5,000 mile plus fiber optic backbone, which provides broadband and internet services to Ohio's anchor institutions, including its colleges and universities, its K-12 school districts, and state and local government. Also, we have a shared infrastructure division within OTech, and that division is responsible for providing general technology support services to consortium members and to the Ohio Department of Higher Education and the Ohio Tuition Trust Authority. We also have the Ohio Library Information Network, also known as OhioLink. OhioLink is the state's library consortium serving 117 academic libraries across the state. OhioLink manages several research and scholarly databases for its member institutions, but it also serves as the procurement arm in the purchase of print and scholarly research materials and instructional materials used by its members. And they purchase this material at highly discounted rates, which in aggregate saves our members millions of dollars per year. And the last vertical within OTech I want to speak about today is the Ohio Supercomputer Center. That center is responsible for providing high performance computing infrastructure to our state's colleges and universities and to our public health organizations. And they also offer that infrastructure out to the private sector as well. Pretty robust pathway for private industry to get access to supercomputing services. And so in addition to managing the consortium, I also serve as principal liaison to several higher education affiliate organizations. And for purposes of today's discussion, I'll highlight 2 real quick. One is the Ohio Research Officers Council, and that council consists of the vice presidents of research at public and private institutions of higher education. I, along with several members of our staff, meet with that group and they discuss research issues important to them, and we try to bring a state perspective to that conversation when appropriate. I also liaise with the state's technology transfer officers. Those individuals are responsible for technology and commercialization practices at their institutions, and we meet with that group to examine how the state might be able to support them in their efforts. So it's my work across all of those entities that lets me know that we have a vast amount of research and innovation infrastructure in Ohio. And from the state's perspective, we just want to know how we can work better with our institutions and our industry partners to reach the full potential of Ohio's research capacity in the state.
Well, thank you, Charles. Thank you for sharing what you all are doing at the Ohio Department of Higher Education. And I think that we'll see a theme with our other guests that doesn't sound like you're terribly busy during the work week. So thank you for making time to share the story with us today, and letting us know, as you said, this industry in higher education, university partnerships, and potential with collaboration. Now we're going to go to Dr. Joseph Shields. Dr. Shields is Vice President for Research and Creative Activity, Dean of the Graduate College, and Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Ohio University. Dr. Shields, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Chris, thanks. I appreciate being part of this event today. So, as you indicated in your introduction, I wear a variety of hats at Ohio University. And as Vice President, I oversee a variety of functions that support research and collaboration with private sector partners. So one unit I oversee jointly with our advancement division is the university's corporate engagement office, which is all about fostering mutually beneficial partnerships with companies. My office also oversees funding for research that comes into the university, and also protection of intellectual property that results from research carried out at the university, and where the goal there is to facilitate its commercialization by private sector partners. I also oversee the Innovation Center. That is our award-winning small business incubator for technology startup companies, which includes companies started by our faculty and students, but also by community members with an entrepreneurial bent. So, as Dean of the Graduate College, my office provides support for approximately 5,400 graduate students pursuing advanced degrees at the university. And a large fraction of those individuals will, of course, go on to work in the private sector after they complete their degrees. So partnerships with private businesses are increasingly seen as important for advancing Ohio University's mission, and supporting these partnerships is a priority for my office.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shields. We appreciate you being with us and sharing the work that you're doing with the Innovation Exchange and Ohio University. Last but not least is our third and final panelist is Dr. Vicki Wysocki, who is the Ohio Eminent Scholar of Macromolecular Structure and Function, Professor of Chemistry and Biochemistry, and Director of the Campus Chemical Instrument Center at The Ohio State University. Dr. Wysocki, thank you so much for joining, and welcome to today's program.
Thank you, and thanks for including me. I'm happy to be part of this. I have my position split into a couple of different roles here, not as nearly as many as our other two guests. In my one function, I am a faculty member in chemistry and biochemistry. So I have a research group of about 20 people, really talented students, postdocs, research scientists who do research on a topic called mass spectrometry, which I'll tell you a little bit more about later. We develop instrumentation, which means we work with a lot of companies, instrument vendors, but also biopharma companies that come to us wanting help with problems they have. And then with my other hat, I'm director of this Campus Chemical Instrument Center, where we provide some services to companies in Ohio and outside of Ohio. I'm also chairing right now a committee for our cores and facilities on campus to develop metadata that can actually feed into the Ohio Innovation Exchange so that we know what cores and other research facilities we have on campus, what kinds of instrumentation and resources are available in them, what are the areas of expertise for all of those centers across campus. And that I think is an important part of the conversation today.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being here. To start, Charles, we'll begin with you, with your perch at the Ohio Department of Higher Education. And let's talk about the Ohio Innovation Exchange, which is a collaborative initiative sponsored by the state's Higher Education Department and resourced under universities that are under the direction of the higher education. Can you just share the background of how this came to be and what this story is? Because this is a multi-university effort that is incredibly interesting. It's incredibly powerful, and I think a real testament to leadership in Ohio at the state level and at the university level that makes this possible. Charles, could you just talk a little bit about the Innovation Exchange and how it came to be?
Yeah, happy to. This effort really came out of some work that had taken place by what was then called the Ohio Border Regions, which transitioned to the Ohio Department of Higher Education. And they were looking at ways in which Ohio could develop strategies to advance, again, its innovation economy, much like the subject we're talking about today. And part of that effort was an outreach campaign. And we went directly to kind of our industry partners and asked kind of what would it take and what would you need to be more collaborative kind of with our institutions in terms of advancing innovation in the state of Ohio. And one of the things that came back was that there was not really a pathway to get clear and efficient access into knowing what was actually available and what was the research that was actually taking place within our institutions of higher education. And some of them had established some personal relationships with institutions where they can get access and knew, but there was not a comprehensive way for industry partners seeking to do partnerships with our institutions to know kind of who was working on what research and what resources were available within our institutions. And one of the suggestions that came out of that was, could there possibly be the development of a portal or a pathway that would have a multitude of institutions contained within it, showcase who their experts were, and give some indication of what kind of equipment and resources was available to advance innovation in the state. So we took that recommendation at the department and we went out to a core group of institutions to determine whether or not they would be interested in working with us to develop a platform or a portal that would accomplish those goals. We started off with 4 institutions: Ohio State University, University of Cincinnati, Case Western Reserve Universities, and Ohio University. In this initial conversation, who all indicated that they would be interested in assisting us in developing the platform. And as we got further along in the strategies, we added the University of Akron and Cleveland State University to the mix. And so, we went through the process of finding a vendor that would help us create this platform. And so we got to a point where we launched it. The platform has gone through some maturity and some iterations. But now at this point, we really do think we have it at a point that the tool really provides real value for anyone, faculty and or industry, seeking to get insight into the expertise of our faculty and what they're working on and how they could see themselves partnering with those entities to advance innovation in the state. There are really some dynamic features contained within the tool right now. You can go to the tool. There's over 10,000 faculty in there from those 6 universities that we mentioned. There's information in there about those faculty's publications. And what we heard specifically from our industry partners was that they were interested in knowing kind of what was the grants that our faculties were receiving and what areas of research they were in that can give more insight as to what was actually being worked on. So as part of a revamp of the tool, we added a grant feature to the tool as well, which gives indications of what grants our researchers are working on. And there's also information in the system around what IP is what currently exists in the innovation exchange in the form of patents. And our institutions have labeled some patents as featured, meaning that they want to have particular attention paid to that set of patents for individuals who may be interested in partnering with them. And one of the more exciting features that we have in the tool is we've established a collaboration network piece. And so meaning that if you find a researcher that you think may be helpful to your endeavors, you also can check and see who that researcher is collaborating with, either within their institution or across the state on similar research. So this gives better insight into determining what are kind of the areas of major research strength in Ohio from a collective. So we are really excited about the tool. Along with the features of the tool, we have a human network connected with it as well. And they consist of the industry liaisons at the institutions that are involved with the tool. So they are basically the conduit that if you want to contact that particular professor or even have another inquiry, since you're on the system, you can write out that inquiry, send that to the particular institution, and there's someone on the other end ready to take a look at that inquiry and see how they might be able to assist you. There are also the capacity to contact researchers directly if you find an individual that you think may be helpful to you in your particular research endeavors. So I get excited talking about it. I know I've said a lot about it because this has been a labor of love for us We started out, I said, with the 4, now it's up to 6, but it's always our intention to invite other institutions to become part of the innovation exchange, and with the ultimate goal of really having the majority of our institutions with their researchers on the system.
Well, great. Thank you, Charles. That was a terrific background and historical timeline of it. And I'll start with Dr. Shields and we'll go to Dr. Wysocki. But Charles mentioned that your institutions are part of that founding, the original 4. And so, Dr. Shields, can you talk why does Ohio University, because there's a million things going on campus and I'm sure you're incredibly busy, but what's the power of this and this statewide collaboration where there is this now portal 4 to 6 and sounds like it'll be expanding. So could you talk, from your university perspective, the potential and power of it?
Sure. I think the key is something that Vice Chancellor C. Charles alluded to early on, is about the key role of giving visibility to the incredible expertise and assets we have at our universities, right? And so there's a variety of ways in which we want to, there's opportunities to engage and partner with private sector partners. And a large part of that goes back to our faculty expertise. And so the kind of engagement that can happen can be, it can be if a company has specific needs or questions it's trying to answer to advance its agenda, they can, through the Ohio University, for a consulting relationship where there can be some, the faculty member expert is giving some advice about specific areas of his or her expertise, or if it's a more complicated question that really goes beyond the current state of knowledge, it can be a bigger collaboration focused around research, right, about trying to answer some new questions. And those are very important relationships benefiting, both the private companies as well as the university. The discoveries that come out of our researchers at the universities, and this is also something Charles alluded to that's encapsulated in the Innovation Exchange, results in intellectual property where we're patenting these discoveries with the whole intention of using that as a vehicle to see these benefit the public through the commercialization pathway. So all of these are important modalities of collaboration between our private sector companies and universities, and the Ohio Innovation Exchange is really enabling to build those kinds of connections.
Thank you, Dr. Shields. Dr. Wysocki?
I would echo a lot of those comments, but also maybe add that having industry aware of what various faculty research groups are doing brings new problems to the table, maybe problems that we wouldn't have thought of if we hadn't been approached by those particular companies, so that we can make better leaps in progress in the research by looking at it from multiple angles and from multiple disciplines. I also think it highlights what our graduates might be able to do for those companies. It might lead to internships for our students. It might lead to future jobs for our students. And then those students would be a connection back to the university to continue this cycle. So I see lots of benefits beyond just, maybe patenting and licensing and those sorts of things, but also just sending out the message of what OSU is doing and making good connections between us and our students and industry as sort of a two-way pipeline that goes back and forth.
Thank you. And you mentioned approach by companies in that two-way pipeline. So maybe Dr. Wysocki, if you wouldn't mind, if a business owner is watching now, or you meet with one, in the coming months that maybe hasn't ever considered approaching a university, and it might be their first time doing so, what does a success in your eyes for that pipeline look like? Where they're able to come to, whether it's your team because they're in an industry that's, very aligned one-to-one, or maybe it's approaching a different colleague on campus somewhere. But what would you say to one of those business owners or business executives that's never really thought to engage that pipeline?
Oh, that university research can be very beneficial to them. I think many of us many researchers at universities really love to work with businesses. We do some work that's just routine. So sometimes companies just want to have some measurements made, and we certainly can help out with those because we have instruments and expertise that they might not be able to have at their local company, especially if it's a smaller company. But also we do the collaborative type of work that Dr. Shields mentioned, where the answers aren't obvious, and maybe the company doesn't have the expertise needed, but between the faculty that they might first approach and the connections that that person might lead them to at other places in the state or other places in their own university, we can usually find somebody who can provide some helpful insight onto the next steps that could be taken.
Great, thank you. Charles, I'd like to take the conversation back to you, because in the state of Ohio, by this, the state of Ohio government, Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Husted, teams like Innovate Ohio's and yours at Ohio Department of Higher Education, innovation and entrepreneurial strategies are a very, very big theme, and they have been for a few years now. Could you talk a little bit about that, maybe at a high level, and then how things like the Ohio Innovation Exchange play into these broader strategies of helping make Ohio a leading innovation hub?
But as mentioned by or stated by the Lieutenant Governor and Innovate Ohio, Ohio is striving to become the most innovative and entrepreneurial state in the Midwest, and that is a stated goal. And you see the strategies manifesting itself in a variety of ways, and just primarily the things that we've talked about already. There's no question that these types of partnerships, university and industry collaborations, are valuable, and they are valuable to the advancement of technology commercialization in the state, job growth in the state, development of new technologies and STEM fields and the like. So at a high level, the state is focused on advancing innovation in these respects. And so things like the Ohio Innovation Exchange, by providing that insight into the expertise at our universities, can work in advancing and help staging for companies what expertise might be available to focus on those endeavors. You also see that there has been a lot of investment in the creation of innovation districts across our state. We have 3 in Columbus, Cincinnati, and in Cleveland. And those are focused on establishing partnerships, public and private partnerships as well, and developing of STEM graduates in particular fields in terms of healthcare and the like to advance innovation across our state.
Thank you, Charles. And Charles, you were starting to mention the innovation districts, and there's the 3 publicly announced ones, but there's incredible innovation centers and hubs of innovation and technology. And so Dr. Shields, your school and your team at Ohio University in Athens, you direct and head up the Innovation Center. So could you talk about what the role universities are when it comes to building these hubs of innovation, of technology advancement, and the role that they play with not just what's happening on campus, but the business community in the region surrounding you?
Sure. I think in Southeast Ohio, we're more rural. We don't have one of these innovation hubs that have been created in the urban districts, but at the same time, we can have elements of that are very impactful for our region. And I would say in Southeast Ohio, we have a particular sense of mission, given our location in Appalachian, Ohio, with some of its historical socioeconomic challenges. But we're making a difference, and we're doing that by diversifying the economy and creating new companies and bringing new companies to this region. And our incubator that I alluded to before, the Innovation Center, directed by Stacy Strauss, is a key part of that. It was the first university-based incubator in the state of Ohio and one of the early ones in the nation. And I think one thing people need to understand, an incubator I think some people think it's just a building where you provide office spaces or something like that, and it's much more than that. It's not only the space, it's the access to shared resources, it's also the staff who provide mentoring, help, development, and evolution of a business plan, access to a variety of types of services. So the Ohio University Innovation Center has evolved to a point where it's actually unique in the state as being an incubator with a focus and special infrastructure to support biotechnology companies. And in fact, we just, in the last year, we received a major $1.2 million grant from the Federal Economic Development Administration to enhance and build out more lab space to support those types of companies. So it allows companies to, with limited resources, to nurture and grow their ideas. And then after they progress, they graduate out, and the hope is they'll stay in the region and provide long-term jobs. And that is happening. It takes time, but we are having an impact in our region through that means.
Thank you, Dr. Shields. Dr. Wysocki, if we could talk about, I mean, we're talking about these innovation districts, both, you know, the formal districts themselves, but also just the theme of these innovation hubs that happen, and things like the Campus Chemical Instrumentation Center. Those make up these hubs. And so could you talk about a little again about what the center does, but then also the way that the center interacts with businesses and industry?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. What our center does is we offer measurement techniques in something called nuclear magnetic resonance. So that's sort of like MRI, if you've ever had an MRI, a medical MRI, but this is the molecular version, so measuring molecules. And then we do something called mass spectrometry, which is a way to weigh or measure the mass of molecules and their pieces when we break them apart and try to piece them together and get structure. We do this on a variety of custom and commercial instruments. And we may be looking at molecules or aggregates of molecules. These might be molecules whose structures are important in disease or disease treatment. They might be polymers to make something out of, or other materials to build things. And so we use a really large variety of different instrument types. And key to this whole thing is that we're not just a set of instruments. We have associated faculty experts and research staff experts and innovators. And that really then has something to offer to the people who come to us. And in terms of businesses interacting with us, most of the instruments we have, and we have a lot of them, are in the price range of $500,000 to maybe $2 million and more. And so companies may not want to invest in a large number of those different instrument types, and they may not want to also have staff expertise because that can get expensive. And so we put all of that together in one place so that the companies can come to us and get some of their problems solved. We currently work with businesses, a lot of businesses in Ohio, but also a lot of businesses in other states and other countries come to us sometimes. Some come for service, others are part of collaborations. So I mentioned that we have faculty experts associated with the center, and what we do there is we apply for federal grants to make modifications to instruments. So for example, I have an NIH center grant in the area of mass spectrometry, a $6.8 million grant, which develops new parts, new pieces for mass spectrometers that make them more effective for looking at protein complexes. My colleague, Raphael Brushweiler and Chris Juraniak have received a $17 million grant to bring a new high field NMR to the center and to Ohio State. This will make Ohio State a national gateway for NMR. 50 research groups from around the country signed on to be users of that NMR once it arrives here. We have, related to that, but not in our center, Robert Baker of my department, chemistry and biochemistry, and other colleagues in both physics and chem biochem, got funding from that same NSF program for ultra-fast laser development. Another colleague, Daewoo Pei, is doing collaborative research with Intrada Therapeutics, who will have a press conference next week to talk about progress they've made. So our center and related centers on campus, related researchers on campus interact with businesses both to provide more routine measurements to them, but also to do these collaborative projects with them that really require faculty and research groups working at the cutting edge. So I think that is how we help set up Ohio as an innovation hub.
Great. Well, thank you. Charles, I'd like to go to you, and this will be a question I'll pose to all three of our panelists of, could you share just one example of a success story that you've come across in your work, and it can be big or small, but where it really just really highlights the potential and power of these university industry collaborations. So one type of success story, again, big or small, where universities came together, higher ed came together with the private sector and industry. And so Charles, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the long-term relationships that we've had, we look at industries around like Honda and their association with Ohio State University and the things that they continue to proliferate within that partnership. And so we see kind of the value of what those long-term or those collaborations can be, and they grow, and we know that they grow and they proliferate over the years. It's not just kind of a one-time equation or one-time approach for a specific project, but those projects grow and proliferate over time. And we want to see those types of relationships across all our institutions. We know there's various examples all the time around with respect to those types of collaborations, but that would be one from a long-term aspect that we've seen some real collaboration and some real successes and some advancements in innovation and economic growth and development from around the state.
Thank you, Charles. Dr. Shields, we'll go to you next.
Sure, I'll give an example focused around, it sort of illustrates the impact that can result from a collaboration with an individual investigator. And that's with Dr. Jason Tremblay, who's a professor of mechanical engineering at Ohio University. And Dr. Tremblay is an expert on material properties of hydrocarbons. So he has received very significant funding from the US Department of Energy to support research on the use of coal in material applications. So not as a fuel, but in other types of ways of using it as a material. And in investigating that, he managed to forge partnerships with two companies. One is Consol Energy, which is a coal producer based in Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. The second is a company based in Columbus. It's Engineered Profiles LLC. The CEO of that company is in fact an Ohio University alum, Mike Davis. And Engineered Profiles has very significant experience in the fabrication of products and materials using extrusion of polymers. So they bring very significant expertise in that domain. By bringing together the expertise of our university researcher, as well as the specific knowledge from these industry partners, they are moving forward with a new building material comprised of a coal polymer composite. And it's basically analogous to what you have now in terms of composite decking, which combines polymer with a wood filler. And in this place, you're replacing the wood with coal. And it turns out that is a highly economic and very high performing alternative. It's inexpensive. It's actually using a waste stream from coal mining in terms of these fine coal particles that are not well suited for energy production. So it's turning a waste stream into a value added product. And if you do the full bookkeeping of CO2 production in the fabrication process, it actually generates less CO2 through the whole process than the traditional form of wood polymer types of building material. So these materials show great promise both for decking and other types of applications. Consol and Engineering Profiles have formed a new joint venture to manufacture these materials, which they'll be taking to market in the next 1 to 2 years. So this would not have come about without this synthesis of knowledge from the university researcher with people out in the private sector with their market-facing knowledge, as well as knowledge of industrial processes. So it's a great illustration.
Thank you. Dr. Wysocki.
I will use an example from my research because I know it parallels research of some of our other faculty on campus too. I started a collaboration many years ago with a company called Waters Corporation. They make mass spectrometers and equipment for separations that attaches to mass spectrometers. And our collaboration involved my group making modifications to their instruments once I had instruments in my lab. They made it possible for me to have instruments that reduced cost. They made it possible for me to have access to engineers who provided electrical drawings and confidential information that companies usually don't share. And as the years went on and we continued collaborating with them, I wanted to reach out and collaborate with other mass spec companies. People in the community told me, you can't do that. You have to collaborate with one company or the other, the others won't collaborate with you. But I pitched to them that we were driving the field forward, not just a particular company forward. And so we now collaborate with multiple mass spec instrument companies. And each of them has provided us with a variety of different kinds of support, instrumentation support, access again to engineers, and a conversation that helps drive the research forward and helps us get our research better funded by the federal funding agencies when these companies write letters of support and so on. The original company, Waters, just announced in the fall that they would be putting one of our devices onto their newest commercial instrument. So although it took many years of research and working together with them, we are now in near finalizing a licensing agreement. And so those kinds of collaborations can be very productive. And it wasn't productive for me just with the final outcome of this device being available on an instrument to users who can now purchase this. It was also useful as we brought along students who were learning and interacting and having this collaboration with a company in a way that they wouldn't have been able to if we weren't doing this industry, university, federal funding type research. Waters, that first company I mentioned, has now hired 6 or 7 of my PhD students because they got to know them through the collaboration. So it's a relationship. So I really want to drive home the building of relationships that can be ongoing and long lasting.
And that's a great point about the relationship side of these. And so Dr. Wysocki, we can actually stay with you. So we've talked about today about the Ohio Innovation Exchange and the work that's newer that is helping make these connections and building these ecosystems of universities and private sector and industry. What are some other ways do you think that we can help just take these ideas that are happening in your laboratories, your research facilities, campuses like Ohio State, and then we can go, Dr. Shields, to Ohio University in the southeastern part of Ohio. But how can we take some more of this and what are other ideas that we could perhaps consider moving forward to take it from research centers, these innovation hubs on campus, to businesses, to the private sector, to factories where it goes to industry?
So you want me to comment on just ideas other than innovation exchange?
Well, like just as we consider moving forward, kind of, in kind of next steps and where you see progress, I would say, going in the next few years.
Yeah. So one thing that has naturally evolved in my research as an example, and I see it with colleagues too, is as we've made technology advances, then we've started having biopharma collaborators come to us. So I've mentioned my collaborations with the instrument companies, but now we've also started developing relationships with several biopharma companies who need the kinds of measurements that we can make, but they realize it's not yet available in the marketplace or just becoming available in the marketplace. And so more and more we have them coming directly to us because they've seen the innovations reported in the literature, seen the innovations reported at conferences and so on. Sometimes their questions clarify to us that there's a marketplace for some of these types of innovations where the instrument companies haven't been too sure. The pharma come to us and say, hey, because the companies haven't made this available yet, could you help us with this? One thing that we've been able to do in the last year is a couple of small companies who wanted to bring some of these devices to the market, ask if we would join them to write small business innovation research grants. And fortunately, we've been able to have a couple of those funded with a small device company and with a software company, trying to make some vendor neutral devices, not depending on the big instrument companies, but putting this out through small companies. So I think just getting our research out there in as many ways as we can, letting as many people see it as we can is one way to make these kinds of connections.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Shields, anything in your work that you're seeing that maybe is happening with increased frequency that you're expecting to occur more frequently in the coming years?
Well, one model that it's not new for us, but it's something we're looking to really expand is sort of a broader basis of consortial collaboration, similar to what Dr. Wysocki was talking about. At Ohio University, we've had for a number of years what started as an NSF-supported industry university cooperative research center called the Institute for Corrosion and Multi-Phase Technology. And the primary focus is on corrosion problems in pipelines, especially for the oil and gas industry. And it's a huge issue. I mean, there's an enormous number of miles of pipeline all over the world. And when you have a failure from corrosion, it can be catastrophic in terms of environmental losses, economic losses. So the center has really developed really leading edge expertise known worldwide for tackling this problem. And it's in close partnership with industry. In fact, we have 30 of the largest oil companies around the world who annually contribute financially to solving common problems that affect the whole industry. So they're sort of pre-competitive problems that aren't proprietary in their sense, but they're generic across all of the different companies that are encountering this with their infrastructure. And I think it's a great model, and it has elements of what Dr. Wysocki described before. This has been going for over 20 years. And so there's many doctoral students who come out of that who then get hired by these companies, taking their expertise out to help the companies, and in turn they come back then representing the companies as the face of the company in our consortial partnership. So that's the kind of thing we're looking to grow, and these sort of center-based, broader-based types of collaborations.
Thank you. And Charles, I'll ask the same question, but rephrase it a bit for your work. What are you seeing, as you mentioned, starting with 4 universities, going to 6, continuing to expand at the Ohio Department of Higher Education? Where do you see some of the trends you've been seeing recently, maybe in the past year or so? And what do you think is going to be kind of playing really prominent roles in the years to come?
Yeah, I just think more exposure to what is happening within our institutions. I mean, you continue to hear the types of examples with the panelists today. Is going to be kind of a key emphasis and strategy for us. Our institutions have, are willing to engage in these types of partnerships moving forward, and we want to get that message out more and more to our industry partners, that they can find value in the course of these types of relationships and collaborations. And we also know how beneficial they are for our students who work with our faculty and get involved in these partnerships. And so, we want to be focused on shining more light on our experts at our institutions and the work that what they are doing, because we know these are pathways for increased innovation in the state, in economic development and technology commercialization moving forward. And we just see a greater willingness of our institutions and to engage in this type of activity, and also kind of recruit more and more faculty who are kind of focused on innovation and so we want to really move that as a strategy forward in order to continue to try and proliferate new discoveries and new research at our institutions that can eventually be discovered by our industry partners in the world.
And as a follow, Charles, I'd love to ask, we're talking with two university partners right now. If you had a room full of 100 industry leaders and connectors and folks from the private sector, what is it, the one thing that you would tell them about the university or the Ohio Innovation Exchange and the potential for partnerships with our universities across the state that maybe they weren't thinking about in their normal, day-to-day work?
Yeah, I would say one, just to really underscore that our institutions are open for these types of relationships. And I think our institutions have done a great job of trying to get that word out. But this is just another tool to let them know that our institutions are open to these types of relationships. And, I would challenge them to kind of go against what they may have previously thought about what it's like to engage and work with our institutions on these types of initiatives. Our institutions have made great strides in smoothing out kind of their processes. You see initiatives like Ohio IP Promise that was all about smoothing out the processes, creating more transparency and ease of being able to establish these relationships. So I would tell them that the state is committed to expanding and proliferating these types of relationships, and that our institutions are on board with that. And they're working diligently to create more seamless and transparent pathways of being able to engage with them to do some of the really important and significant work that you've kind of heard about here today, and that we know that's going on in other parts of our institutions.
Thank you. And Dr. Shields, I saw you nodding your head as Charles was speaking. Maybe if you could, from your perspective, if a new business or a new industry partner comes to Southeastern Ohio or across the state who's interested in the work happening on campus in Athens, what would that kind of opening message to them be?
It would really be to affirm everything you just heard from Vice Chancellor C, which is that we are committed to being good partners with industry. We've taken concrete steps to be better partners. We've engaged in the statewide initiative that Charles referred to, the Ohio IP Promise, to give transparency and more smooth engagement around partnering with industry. Our corporate engagement office is something we didn't have when I started in my position a decade ago. And so that really helps us to be much more organized in how we talk to potential industry partners. That's our interface with the Ohio Innovation Exchange. It provides this concierge service. If a company is trying to find resources at the university, these individuals are there to help our private sector colleagues. So absolutely, we're here and we're interested in working together.
Great. Well, thank you. And Dr. Wysocki, do you have anything to add?
I would like to add that I think that the state can help this whole thing by making sure that we don't have these impediments to having these industry university relationships, so that when people come to us, it's pretty smooth to get started. That's our goal, is to make it smoother. I'd like to also say that as people are looking at state of Ohio, the breadth of what we can do is amazing. And so I talked about the work that we do pretty generically, but it spans from biomedical research to materials research. It's a really broad swath of research that can be done across OSU and our other universities in the state. It's not just a few specialty areas. There are a lot of different things we could help with. And one last thing is for us to not forget that on each of our campuses and between our campuses, there's a lot of innovative work that we could do together. And that's something that we're trying to improve at Ohio State, is letting each other know internally about what we do, so that we develop better cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary research.
Well, thank you. And with an eye to time, we have a few more minutes left, and so we'll do two quick kind of round robin questions. The first one is not that all these questions haven't been fun and exciting. The first one's a little off topic from the conversation that we like to ask as we host events across a wide range of topics and conversational areas. And so for this one, we'll go Charles, Dr. Shields, Dr. Wysocki. What is favorite place in Ohio? So you have someone coming to town, maybe a colleague from another state, family members, as we're opening back up, where would you take them? And so Charles, we'll start with you.
Okay, and Chris, if you allow me, just before I get to answer that question, I failed to mention the, where you can find the Ohio Innovation Exchange, ohioinnovationexchange.org. That wasn't mentioned previously, so I encourage everyone to go out and take a look at the tool. But to answer your question, I'm an alumnus of The Ohio State University, so I would take them to Ohio Stadium on a football Saturday, and let them know that will be able to make great, long-lasting friends in the area that they're sitting around for about 3 hours in terms of rooting for the Buckeyes. So
that's awesome. And I think we're all looking forward to those Saturdays in the fall coming up. So Dr. Shields.
Sure. In Athens, we have something called the Ridges, which was originally the Athens Asylum, established in 1874 as part of a reform movement for the treatment of people with mental illness. It's a very striking Victorian large structure, which was transferred from the state of Ohio to the university in the 1980s and 1990s, in addition to 700,000 square feet of interior space. There's 700 acres dating from when it was a working farm. The outdoor acreage now has paths, woods and paths, and wonderful places to go outdoors. The buildings remain striking and have been progressively, partially, adaptively renovated. But in fact, we are looking to the vacant spaces in those buildings as ideal spaces for partnership with private sector partners who might be interested in locating in this area to create our own innovation district. It's a wonderful place to visit. It's also a place with huge potential for the future.
Well, thank you. And Dr. Wysocki.
Oh, I am fairly new to Ohio. I've been here for 8.5 years. And to me, that still feels newish. I often, when family come to visit, we mostly stay in the Columbus area. And I often take them to the zoo. Really like the zoo here, really fantastic zoo. Because a lot of my family who come to visit are coming from small towns. We also try to go out and enjoy a nice restaurant in Columbus, maybe down to the short north. So I would say Columbus. So there's a great article from the Washington Post a few years ago that says, consider vacationing in Columbus, Ohio. And I sometimes send that to faculty candidates or visitors who are coming because it highlights some of the nice things to do in Columbus.
Great. Well, all three great answers. So thank you for that. And final one, as we're looking to wrap up, and Charles, thank you for mentioning the website URL, which I dropped in the chat. So it's an easy one click and folks can check it out and hopefully bookmark it. But final one is simply anything we didn't get to, an opportunity to share anything we didn't touch on, anything you want to share with this audience. So Charles, we'll start with you.
No, I think we cover most of the bases, but again, I would just, encourage, the industry partners who are not familiar with the research expertise that exists in Ohio, or, who want to engage, to reach out, to our institutions. Again, they are ready and willing and to accept those types of partnerships. I think the exchange will provide, lots of value. For industry partners as they look to find ways to coordinate and collaborate with our institutions.
Well, thank you. Dr. Shields.
I would just underscore something that came up a little bit that we might develop slightly more, which is that in looking to partner with industries, we're looking at this in a sort of holistic sense. We focused a lot around research and innovation and technology here, but it's also, as both Dr. Wysocki and I talked about, it's about talent, right? It's about our students at the graduate level, but also the undergraduate level, right? At all our universities, we do a lot to work with our students to allow them to be successful as they move out into the workforce. This is where industry partnerships are also very important in terms of having representatives on our advisory boards for our various professional schools and colleges, giving us that industry-facing expertise to tell us how we can do a better job as universities. So there's sort of a whole continuum of ways we see opportunity for mutually beneficial partnership And we're really looking for these very robust ways of connecting across that continuum.
Thank you. Dr. Wysocki.
I think I would just agree with the two previous answers. We have so many different ways that industry can interact with us. They can come and ask for something specific. They can start in a small way by coming to an industry day. For example, Chem Biochem holds an industry day. It's a soft way to start to hear about some of the research and meet the students. They can, come and participate in undergrad poster session judging and those sorts of things as a way to start getting involved in some of the research. There are internships they can offer, just all kinds of different ways to start interacting with us, or they can go full steam ahead and ask to do some collaborative research. So look at connecting and building on the first connections to something useful.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. That was a perfect close. And I want to thank our three panelists. So thank you each for being with us this afternoon, sharing the work that you're doing in your individual roles, but also happening with your larger organizations. Our universities are incredible assets and are truly powering and driving innovation across the state. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you to our attendees for listening and tuning in and hopefully learning something new and some resources that are out there. And so anyone who hasn't, we'd absolutely recommend checking out the Ohio Innovation Exchange, which again is ohioinnovationexchange.org. It's an incredible resource, an incredible opportunity for university industry partnership. And us at OhioX, we are incredibly passionate and supportive of the mission. And so thank you to the partnership of everyone who's made this event possible. It's a beautiful day, at least in Columbus, and hopefully in the rest of the state as well. So I hope everyone has a great day. Enjoy your Friday and have a terrific weekend, everyone. Thank you so much.